Welcome back to the Middle Tech Podcast. You've got Logan Jones here with Evan Knowles, recording out of the Sales River Studio in Lexington, Kentucky. We've got some local stories to go over today, a few global stories. We're going to be talking about Forecastr and their most recent fundraising round of $4.5 million. We're going to be talking about Sam Altman's latest crypto project, Worldcoin, with the goal of verifying humans. And we're also going to be talking about Meta's latest artificial intelligence model, generating audio from text. So before we dive into those stories, please remember to support our podcast by subscribing to our YouTube channel, following us on socials at Middle Tech Pod. And before we dive into these stories, let's get a quick word from our sponsors. Before highlighting our sponsors, we'd just like to state that the views and content shared on this platform do not necessarily reflect those of our show sponsors. Middle Tech is presented by KY Innovation, the Kentucky Cabinet for Economic Development's Office of Entrepreneurship. KY Innovation exists to support and develop Kentucky's startup ecosystem, and we are proud to be supported by an organization whose mission aligns so closely with ours. If you're a founder building in Kentucky, you need to check out the resources that KY Innovation has to offer. You can find more information by clicking the link in our show notes or going to kyinnovation.com. Middle Tech is sponsored by Bolt Marketing. Take your website to the next level with a website that's built to work. At Bolt Marketing, they're revolutionizing websites for small businesses that are affordable, customizable, and hassle-free. Whether you have a construction company, a boutique clothing store, or you own a hot yoga studio, they have options for you. Click the link in our show notes to explore their marketing options that can transform your marketing and grow your business. And as a personal note, Bolt Marketing built our website, and they were awesome to work with throughout the entire process. We highly recommend working with them. All right, so this first story is coming to us from Louisville, Kentucky, from some past guests of ours. Startup Forecastr, founded by Logan Burchett and Stephen Plappert, has announced a new round of fundraising, this time raising $4.5 million in fresh capital. So Evan, I know you talk to these guys pretty frequently. You talk to them about this particular story. So give us some of the details here and let's talk about what they're going to do with this fresh round of capital.
Yeah. So they've been working on this since January of this year. I got lunch with Stephen not too long ago. And you know, they've been grinding. This was, they worded this as a nose to the grindstone round in the article that we read from KYNO, but you know, I got lunch with him and he was pretty stressed out about it. So I'm really glad that they got it done to continue building and investing in the company. It was 1.2 of that 4.5 was safes. So I imagine the rest of it was in some other form of equity, in the form of maybe some kind of convertible debt. But this brings their total fundraising to $9 million to date. So it's a great number for them to build a solid team and take the product to market, which they've been doing very well. They've gotten their revenue up to 1.9 million in ARR. And by the end of the year, they're hoping to reach 2.5 million. So to invest in the company and get to that 2.5 number, they want to evenly distribute the funds between product, engineering, sales, marketing, and finance and operations. So pretty even across the company. They don't want to grow headcount too much. So they want to reinvest in the company, make sure that they're serving their current customers and expanding, but not raising headcount too much. So they want to stay lean, given the capital environment is tough right now, but also they want to reach profitability, which many startups are having to do earlier than they wanted to, just because it's harder to raise. Valuations have come down a bit. So companies are wanting to invest more heavily into profit-generating sides of the business. So that's great. So looking forward to seeing how they continue to grow. They've got 700 customers today, and they vary between pre-seed and Series B rounds. And so hopefully they continue to get more customers and grow the business.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. If you want to learn more about Forecastr, we did have them on the podcast. That's episode 152. It was back in June of 2021. So it's crazy to think how many people we've
an update with them.
Yeah, so we'll have them on the Spotlight series soon to get an update. But again, episode 152, and just as a high level, what they do, they work on financial modeling for startups, helping them fundraise. Moving on to this next story, let's talk about Worldcoin. So this is something that was kind of on our radar over the past few weeks. We wanted to see more articles come out about it before we talked about it. But this Worldcoin project is, I think, really interesting. This is one that's been started in part by Sam Altman, who is the founder of OpenAI and ChatGPT. And Worldcoin is setting out with the goal of helping distinguish between artificial intelligence and real humans on the internet. And I think that's a really fascinating thing to be going after right now, but there's all sorts of different dynamics around privacy, how that's being implemented, and you know how how the company is actually going to function, what they're trying to build. So Evan, give us some of the details here. Let's have a conversation around why they're doing what they're trying to do, what some of the potential problems with that are going to be, and some of the methods that they're actually trying to use to implement this.
Yeah. So as Sam Altman has been building OpenAI, he's gotten more insight than arguably anybody in the world on what is generative AI and kind of the new era of AI mean for civilization. And so this is one of those things that he has launched to try to solve problems that he foresees happening in the future, which is as these generative AIs continue to expand and work their way into more of our everyday lives, it's going to be hard for us to tell what's an AI and what's a human. These generative AI solutions, as far as conversation goes, they already pass a Turing test, which means you can't tell if it's an AI you're talking to or a human. And so that's a big milestone. And as that continues to work its way through hardware, voice, and of course text, we'll need ways to identify, okay, is this person or thing I'm talking to a verifiable human? And so that has wide-reaching implications across all types of scenarios that you need to prove your identity, whether it's on social media or you're purchasing something, you're filling out a form online, whatever it might be, that's necessary. And so one of the other applications that he's been working on as far as solutions for the future of AI is one that is highly controversial. It's been brought up previously in presidential elections, and it's universal basic income. And so in order for that even to take place, you have to verify that the money in that system, if it were to be created, is going to an actual human. And so this is kind of what he describes as the first step in like universal basic income, essentially. You've got to be able to tell, okay, I'm a government and I'm giving somebody money. Is this verifiably a human, so that we're not being a part of some scheme, AI scam or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and in the quote from the article that we're referencing here, he does say that he believes UBI is way out in the future. It's far off. But what Worldcoin is really trying to do is just lay the foundation on how that would actually be done for a lot of the reasons Evan just went over there. I think one of the things that is going to need to be examined and analyzed a lot and discussed a lot is the privacy behind this. And you're having an orb essentially scan your iris and getting that biometric data to turn that into a unique identifier to be able to identify if you're an actual human or not on the internet. A lot of people are pointing to that and saying that sounds very dystopian. I agree, it does sound dystopian, but you can't deny that we need some sort of solution to this. There has to be something implemented to solve this problem. And even though it does sound kind of dystopian, scanning your iris with this weird looking silver orb, I don't think anybody can disagree that this is some sort of solution to it.
It's already been proven that this will work. So I'm actually a customer of a company called Clear, which if you've been in an airport, you've seen Clear. They do this. And this is already a proven very large business. So I've been doing this for a while now. And you just walk up to this machine, it scans your eyes, or you put your fingerprints on there. I normally do the eye scan. And it works really well. You skip the line at the airport, you pay $180 a year. And if you travel a good amount every year, that's nothing, because if you miss one flight, that's way more than $180. And so I've saved some missed flights before using Clear. But the point is, people and consumers are already scanning their eyes for identity verification. And the reason eyes are great for this is because, as far as privacy and getting around this, in order for somebody to basically hack this system, they'd have to recreate a version of your eyes, which is, one, it's a physical thing. You can't just put an image in there and it work well in any scenario. And so they'd have to somehow figure out a way to replicate either your eyes or your fingerprints. We've been using fingerprints forever, but eyes are even more complex and they're organic. They're not something you can just print yet. And so it's really hard to create this stuff. And so it's a good solution. It works for Clear. I imagine it's going to work in this case. The big challenge for them is how do you get scale even more than what Clear has done to date, because Clear has great use cases at airports, at stadiums. How do you create more of an incentive than that? Because are you going to be able to outgrow Clear? I don't know.
Yeah. So two things there. One, on the privacy concerns, the company is stating that unless an individual requests otherwise, that after their iris is scanned, they're assigned a unique identifier and then their biometric data is deleted. So again, maybe it's risky to take them at their word for that, but that is what the company is saying is happening when you actually get your iris scanned. And two, this is actually a crypto project is kind of the underlying schematic, the underlying architecture that is powering this thing, being able to use a decentralized database essentially to store that biometric data. So it's not controlled by any one entity. It's not controlled by any one government. And to your point about how are they going to get bigger than clear, they're trying to solve this cold start problem by using that crypto attached to it. They're giving, I believe it was like 25 Worldcoins or something like that, maybe the equivalent of $25 to those who scan their irises to enter this database. So this is going on all around the world right now in various different cities. I don't have the exact number they have signed on, but I know it's in the millions. So we'll see where this develops to from here. But you can't deny it's an interesting solution to a problem that we're going to have to face, that we're already facing.
It'll be a thing. I mean, the world has to do
thing.
this. We won't have a choice. The next story, actually, in AI Edge, when we get there, I'll touch on how that connects to this as well. But whether it's Worldcoin or somebody else that does human identification and verification, it'll have to be something like eyes and more scalable solutions that are digital.
Yeah, I mean, ask yourself, would you rather it be a private company or would you rather it be the government? It's like it's going to be one of those two entities. It's either going to be a government organization, it's going to be the United States government that's trying to implement this, or it's going to be a private entity. And I'm sure different people would have different answers depending on your outlook on that. But that's the question we're asking here. Let's move on to the AI Edge segment, though. The AI Edge segment: stories, tips, and topics for gaining an edge with artificial intelligence. Meta is who we discussed last week in the AI Edge segment. We're talking about them again. They're making some moves. They just released their Llama 2 open source model. They're now releasing another open source model, this time dealing with AI audio tools called AudioCraft. And then there's also, I saw you put some notes in here about personas. So give us some details on what Meta's been up to and why this is significant. And then let's relate that back to Worldcoin and what you're talking about there.
Yep. So that Llama 2 model that was announced is going to be released within Microsoft's ecosystem, is powering a new feature that people expect Meta to launch very soon called personas. So essentially, while you're in Facebook, whether in WhatsApp, the Facebook app, Instagram, you'll be able to chat with AIs. Again, these AIs, you can't tell if they're human or not, but the whole idea is you could chat with, let's say, Abraham Lincoln or William Shakespeare. And the conversation is very authentic to those people's personas, hence the name. So it's a new way to experience the internet, to chat, to search, and really just to engage within their ecosystem. And so pretty interesting. I'm still trying to think through what are the implications of being able to just chat with any persona, dead or alive, but also what does that mean for the confusion that could come when you don't know if you're chatting with a real person or not. You'll start to see influencers be able to launch their own personas eventually. He's talked about that on several podcasts I've listened to. Mark Zuckerberg has. So it's a really interesting application of generative AI that, again, allows us to just engage with the internet in new ways.
Yeah, and the personas thing, the thing it makes me think of right off the bat is like a Black Mirror episode. Especially in culture today where everyone's on social media. A large majority of people are on social media and a large majority of people are sharing things on social media. The persona that you can make with artificial intelligence is probably going to be pretty spot on to how you talk, the things you share, all of those sorts of things. So it makes me think of that Black Mirror episode where the person passes away, but you could still, chat with somebody that is no longer alive. So just things that you kind of, the Black Mirror,
Think about if you're, let's say, Michael Jackson's family. He's passed away, but there's still a lot of Michael Jackson fans. And if they want to talk with Michael Jackson and this persona says something that the family doesn't want it to say, what happens in that situation? Who owns the right to Michael Jackson's voice and his persona? I think that these kind of questions are going to be popping up. And again, it gets back to why the last story was relevant, Worldcoin, is you've got to know if you're talking to a real person or not. Is it their actual persona? They're a real person? You're talking to them, or are you talking to an AI? And so you're going to have to know these things in the future. And it's not very far off. I mean, this is going to be needed within the next several months, this year.
And the one thing I want to add to that, and you mentioned it briefly in the Worldcoin story, is that, when in the past, when you're trying to verify if it's a human on the internet, the way we've done that is through, does it have intelligence? Can you converse with it, or
Can you pick a group of stairs out on photos?
That's a better way to put it. And now what's happening is that that's no longer a differentiator with AI technology on the internet. So you have to have a way to actually verify it's human. We basically have to take it a step up. We have to verify our biometric data to be able to verify if it's human or not. Let's move on to the next part of this, which is talking about the open source audio craft. This is a pretty insane one. So this is using an AI model to be able to type in text and be able to create a whole soundscape, be able to create, background noise for a video, all sorts of wild stuff here. So give us some of the details around that.
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot more details than what you just described. They're releasing that model. It's open source. So, my theory is why is Meta open sourcing all these models? It's to basically allow their creators and entrepreneurs to build tools on their platforms to increase engagement on their platforms. So, these chat experiences, you can imagine opening up Instagram and you create a story and you can just type on that interface what kind of music, what kind of sounds you want in the background of your story, and you don't have to go searching for that anymore. It just creates it on the fly. So these kind of things are a great use case for open sourcing. Just get it to the market quickly, let the market do its thing, let people iterate on it, don't charge for it, reduce the friction. And so they're wanting to flood the market with these free models so that people bring them within their own ecosystem versus, making people pay for them. So you're going to have way more business application of these models. And so people are going to be more willing to pay, but they're not going to spread as wide as Facebook wants to spread these technologies. It's the same approach as what they're doing with virtual reality. Their virtual reality headsets, they're trying to get them as cheap as possible and get them as wide into as many hands as possible. Whereas Apple, for instance, is making a very expensive headset. So there's kind of a different approach from Facebook, both on the VR front, and now we're starting to see the exact same thing with these AI generative models. That's my theory on why they're all open sourced, but also just for transparency. They've been getting in a lot of trouble for other algorithms that are not open source. And so I think they're trying to turn over a new leaf on this front. But that's kind of my take on this story is, they want these audio tools because audio is a big part of, Instagram and Facebook, and they want them to be as wide as possible and let people experiment with them for free.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, that concludes that story. For our Spotlight series, if you missed it, last week we had an awesome Spotlight series with our friend Armando Diaz, who is the creative force behind Working with Saint. So if you're in the creative space, you want to hear a story about combining creative thinking with business thinking, that's a great episode for that. This coming Wednesday, we'll be releasing a Spotlight series episode with Adam Van Wingerden of Silver Fern Group. So we talked to Adam back in 2020 when he was first starting his business. We caught back up with him this past week to talk about what all he's accomplished in the past 3 years, challenges he's faced, how he's overcome those, and the successes as well. So be sure to tune into that. Other than that, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week.